Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Vatican experts have told us when Father Malachi Martin was asked, why do they have a presence on Mount Graham? And one of the things we haven't had time to talk about is Mount Graham is sacred to the Apache. It is a stargate through which they've for centuries have seen creatures that come, that move back and forth.
Now this is right in Arizona.
This is in Arizona. When Malachi Martin was asked, why is the Vatican on Mount Graham? What are they doing up there? He said that they're using their telescope to watch something. And when he was pressed on the question, he said it's because at the highest levels of the Vatican governance, they know what is approaching the Earth, and it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. They're literally watching something with the Lucifer device that is approaching planet Earth.
And what do you believe they're looking for?
I think that they could be deceived. I think they're watching something and they think it's one thing and I think it's something else. They're literally watching something with the Lucifer device that is approaching planet Earth.
And what do you believe they're looking for?
I think that they could be deceived. I think they're watching something and they think it's one thing and I think it's something else.
8 en la pantalla.
Síguelo, no lo cierres.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
Years ago, many years ago, in fact, 1972, I was sitting at my desk at about 4:30 in the morning at the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, arranging the information that had come in over the last 24 hours into a logical order so that we could prepare a briefing for the Admiral and his staff, which would take place later that morning. Among the papers I found on my desk was a document entitled Operation Majority. One of these projects was called Project Red Light. The purpose, according to this document, was to back engineer captured extraterrestrial technology for adaptation into the United States space program. Now, I have since come to believe that the extraterrestrial portion of all of this is nonsense, but that the technology is real. I wanted to know just how true all of this was, and I began a program of research to find out if extraterrestrials were real. The first thing I did was collect every bit of documentation that I could find, both from the Freedom of Information Act, from the research of others, from books that had been printed on the subject of UFOs, and of course through my network of friends in the intelligence community. What I discovered was amazing. What I discovered, ladies and gentlemen, is that there has been a plan in existence since about 1917, and probably before that, to create an artificial extraterrestrial threat to this Earth in order to create a one-world totalitarian socialist government.
John Dewey said, "Someone once told me that the best way to end wars forever and unite all humanity on this earth in a world government would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet." That's what he said, ladies and gentlemen, in 1917. It was tested in 1938 with the broadcast of Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater's War of the Worlds to present a hoax to find out if it was believable, if the populace would fall for it, and they did.
All the bombardment of the public with movies about flying saucers in the 50s, right after the United Nations Treaty was signed and the UN Participation Act was pushed through Congress, and all of the incidents since that have convinced the majority of the American people that flying saucers are real and extraterrestrials exist, and that flying saucers are from an extraterrestrial origin. This is being promulgated in many ways, by television commercials, in the movies, in the newspapers, by creating incidents either real or imagined. I believe, because of my research, and because of the extensive documentation that I've found and that is in my book, that this whole scenario has been created to give us an artificial alien threat from outer space.
So here, I have a flower in my hand. It's pretty, but it doesn't really exist. What you see is a 3D object that we're merging into a video in real time. By using standard personal computer, we can mix real and virtual together with a new level of interactivity, a new level of fluidity. And look how the flower is perfectly following the movement of my hand. Using augmented reality, software engineers and designers can visualize new prototypes by changing shapes, colors, testing new ergonomic, cutting design time and cost dramatically, saving over 10 million euros on each project. So as I put the hammer on this table, we are going to start a race by producing a 3D element that will take into account the actual relief of these real models using real terrain feedback.
If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of its social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And that opens a question of, really at two levels, perhaps something that we are creating ourselves, perhaps a series of images that we are projecting. I think Carl Jung came very close to expressing that idea in one of his books. Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
Project Bluebeam is a top-secret operation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA for short, of the United States of America. Project Bluebeam is divided into 4 steps. Step 1. The first step in the NASA Bluebeam project concerns the breakdown of all archaeological knowledge. We will see more and more hoax discoveries, where these new discoveries will finally explain to all people the error of all fundamental religious doctrines. The falsification of this information will be used to make all nations believe that the religious doctrines have been misunderstood for centuries, and misinterpreted the masses. Psychological preparations for that first step have already been implemented with such things as the 2001 A Space Odyssey film, the Star Trek TV series, X-Files, Falling Skies, and movies such as Independence Day, District 9, 2012 the movie, Skyline, and many others. Step 2. The second step is about creating a gigantic space light show with 3D holograms and sounds, laser projections of multiple holographic images. You would think holograms are science fiction. Just Google 3D hologram on YouTube. Step 3. The third step is a telepathic electronic two-way communication with extra low frequency, very low frequency, powerful waves which are able to reach everyone on Earth. Using 𝗢𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶 wave technology, 𝗢𝗃 waves can be directly projected into the brain, causing the brain to receive messages, words, and instructions. The US military says that the 𝗢𝗃 can provide a way to wipe out communications over an extremely large area, while keeping the military's own communications systems working. So plainly, and simply, it can be used for mind control, and the military knows all about it as well. Step 4. Electronic universal supernatural manifestation designed to deceive will create the following illusion. Make mankind believe an alien invasion is imminent. How are they going to project the images on the sky? Well, if this is your question, then you have to get back to step 2, and research on 3D holograms, and how they work. Here's a simple explanation. To project 3D holograms you need a solid surface you can project them on. And to create a big surface in the sky, you need clouds. Do you ever hear of chemtrails? Now everything makes sense, does it not? Mysterious clouds appearing in the sky out of nowhere and without any explanation of the government. This is very suspicious, and it is no longer a conspiracy, it is a fact. This is the work for the entire government and system, and they are controlled by the globalist elite and Illuminati, and they are using this project for only the one thing that's precious to them. The New World Order.
I know for a fact that the plan is to make all of us feel totally helpless, that what's happening is beyond our realm to affect because we've been taken over by aliens, that our Independence Day is dawning. So beware of that. Understand that those criminals have been keeping information and technology from us under their blanket of national security. They are 25 years ahead of us at least, technologically. Can you imagine what they've got now?
What you're seeing here has nothing to do with little green men from Mars, I assure you. Nothing to do with aliens. What you're looking at is the 𝗲𝗏 7. Matter of fact, we went over and got not only the the rockets, you know about all that, but we also got this technology right here, and we brought it back. Hitler had a whole series of these 𝗲𝗏 saucers made. Now this thing couldn't even leave Earth's atmosphere. It was not a flying saucer like you're thinking about. No little green men involved. We're talking about pure German science here, okay? And it really was just a different form of a helicopter. It still operated off aerodynamic lift, off blades that were run by 12 motors. Our people discovered much of these technological advances when we went in under Operation Paperclip. We went in and began to bring their scientists out. Even before the end of the war, we sent in people and began to make arrangements to recruit their scientists and their intelligence establishments. Hitler's intelligence establishment, almost intact, was brought out of Germany by the Dulles brothers, Henry Kissinger, and other men who worked on that project to get those people out of there. And those people, the Galen org, was eventually turned into your CIA. You people have no concept that half of the CIA was Nazis and the other half was these stool groups like the Skull and Bone groups that Bush came out of.
Poquito, arriba.
8, 9, 10, 11, contando toda la cola. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11.
Ok, no sabemos qué estamos viendo, son unos objetos nada más luminosos que vienen a la misma altura que nosotros, pero no podemos saber qué están.
And so Hitler believed he was receiving instructions from these ascended masters. And these 300 Tibetan priests were doing channeling between Hitler and Tibet using Tibetan tarot cards, and they were leaving their bodies, they were doing astral projection, they were just doing all kinds of different things. The ascended masters are those demigods, those people who have evolved past humanity. And they've evolved so far out there that they're no longer operating in this plane. They're just out there. They operate in a whole new level, a whole plane of existence that we haven't evolved to yet, okay?
A number of therapists have sent me pictures. This is a common theme. Therapists working with satanically abused people, trying to get their minds back. After all this abuse, and sexually abused people that have been in these mind control projects. And it's a very consistent theme that when these people who've been victims of this, they use a lot of drawing to try to draw out their memories. Again and again, what they draw are people with reptilian eyes. These are actually drawn by a satanically abused person, and these were sent to me with their permission by their therapist. Again, Roman Polanski was talking from knowledge, shall I put it, when he made that film Rosemary's Baby in the 60s with Mia Farrow. And for anyone who doesn't know about that, if you can get hold of a copy, it's worth watching. Mia Farrow is pulled in unknowingly because they want her to interbreed with one of these non-human entities to give birth to a child of the bloodline. And this satanic group get hold of her and they put her under mind control, and they impregnate her and stuff. And towards the end of the film, when she starts to realize what's going on, she goes into this apartment where it all went on, and memories start to come back, and she sees the baby she gave birth to in a non-conscious state, and you have a quick flash of it in the movie, and it's a reptilian baby with reptilian eyes. Well, Polanski should know, let's put it that way.
You know, they read in the Bible that, we're all going to land in a lake of fire, and this and that. So that's baloney. Besides that, he said, spirits now, even spirits, have the capacity now to outlive fire. He says, you don't believe it, go to India or some of those countries where they have firewalkers. And it's done by the power of the even spirits. These people are energized by even spirits, so they can walk on those hot coals without burning themselves.
បាទឥឡូវសូមលោកពូអញ្ជើញមកភ្លើងហុយតែម្ដងបាទអូកំពុងឆេះតគូតកើតែម្ដងបាទបាទសូមអញ្ជើញបាទ1 2 3អប់ខ្ញុំតន់តែ2ណាហើយចង់តាមមើលតើវាពេញមាត់ខាំបាទអូ
Sir John Dee
conjured up demons or angels, okay, with his black magic. The beings that he conjured up, there were pictures drawn of them, and they look identical to what we call gray aliens. Okay, I tell you something. And then I visit with debriefing people that came out of high levels of the Illuminati, and these different types of aliens are participating in Illuminati rituals. I could go on. The bottom line is I have concluded that there are no good aliens. The aliens are demons, and we've got a mixture going on of demons and flesh and blood, and we've also got other genetic experiments.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
And during the initiation rites, you could hear strange cries and whispers coming from the Skull and Bones tomb.
Despite a lifetime of attempts to get inside, the best Rosenbaum could do was hide out on the ledge of a nearby building a few years ago to videotape a nocturnal initiation ceremony in the tomb's courtyard.
The initiates are told that they are superior beings and are part of a privileged elite who use war, terror, and famine to control Earth's human population.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
War, terror.
To control Earth's human population.
Hopefully my health will allow me to keep going until we win the battle against these satanic forces that have come upon our nation and the world.
We can find meaning and reward by serving some higher purpose than ourselves. A shining purpose, the illumination of 1,000 points of light.
John, let's talk about these reptilians. In the biblical days, when, you know, they said the devil came, and they, you know, the description is kind of close to some of these reptilians. Is it possible that these demons, these devils, might be the reptilians?
I believe entirely that that might be the case, because we have to see it from their historical point of view. They didn't know the term alien, or they weren't thinking of things that God could have created other than themselves.
These are real. This isn't make-believe. These are attacks that were coming to hurt the American people again.
Recently, it's getting bigger and bigger with the alien deception. Anyone who's got half a brain that's a Christian knows that Satan's planning a false invasion or some kind of alien event. We don't know exactly what it is, but you could rest assured if our government's behind it, it's the lie of the devil.
Because God help us if we unite the world around an Independence Day type scenario where all the people of the world are united in peace because we're fighting an interstellar civilization that's being masqueraded by the secret government with ARBs and what have you. Don't be fooled again.
And so Hitler believed he was receiving instructions from these ascended masters. And these 300 Tibetan priests were doing channeling between Hitler and Tibet using Tibetan tarot cards, and they were leaving their bodies, they were doing astral projection, they were just doing all kinds of different things. The ascended masters are those demigods, those people who have evolved past humanity.
There are many legends concerning Tibet that speak of a race of supermen inhabiting this region on Earth, a legend which many German intelligentsia and pre-World War II occult societies, like the 𝗢𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶 Society, which Hitler was a member of, adhered to. Unbeknownst to most of the world today, the founders of the Nazi Party, starting with Hitler himself, were steeped in these occult traditions and were profoundly influenced by the teachings of the secret 𝗢𝗿𝗍 Society, whose demonstrably racist ideologies were a warped version of theosophy and ancient German mythology. By the time of Hitler's rise, most of pre-World War II European occult traditions were dominated by the magical system that Crowley painstakingly created. And Hitler himself was envious of Crowley's infamy as the most evil man in the world, as well as his magical prowess.
Audio Jungle.
Aleister Crowley was the premier self-styled Western magician of the 20th century, who some have called the most evil man in the world. Crowley simply termed himself the Great Beast. He wouldn't invite him to dinner. Whose secret name in his order was Phoenix. Parsons became one of Crowley's greatest students and was said to have been his personally chosen successor. Let me repeat that. We have documentation, no question, that Parsons was selected by Crowley to be his successor in these arcane, magical rituals and ceremonies and practices. This is not something you're going to get from a NASA press release, all right? Parsons quickly moved up the ranks of Crowley's organization called the Order of the Eastern Temple and was eventually appointed head of the lodge in Pasadena by Crowley himself. Parsons swore an oath of allegiance to guide humanity into, quote, an age of communion with the gods. Is this something you're going to read in NASA's official stuff? Using his demonstrable vast talents of insight and science and, in his own words, magic. The objectives of those like Crowley who practice Western magic is ostensibly, quote, to advance humanity by contact with higher intelligence. That is, read with extraterrestrials. According to Crowley, one can contact these higher intelligences by becoming one with them. That is, by metamorphing into man-gods, or supermen. This was Crowley's primary goal, attainable in his beliefs through the ancient systems of the Hebrew and Greek Kabbalah and other forms of metaphysical, quote, science. All practitioners of magic, philosophically based occultists such as the Theosophists or Freemasons, have been consumed with interest of finding the origins of the human race. You just have to read what they write. It is claimed by the founders of many of these secret orders that they have received guidance from direct contact with those who call themselves the secret chiefs of the Great White Brotherhood. These masters, we are told, have literally dictated the laws and agendas of these mystery schools of ancient thought and wisdom. Now, Crowley, in the latter part of the last century and the beginning of this, the 20th, claimed to have had many such indescribable contacts, but two were of the greatest importance in apparently redirecting his entire life and thus changing the face of modern magic for all who followed. The first contact that Crowley relates was in April of 1904 in Cairo. Crowley tells us that he encountered an entity who he considered to be his, quote, holy guardian angel. This entity identified himself as 𝗎𝗎 and proceeded to dictate to Crowley the so-called Book of the Law, or what would eventually become, to some, the canon of 20th century magical practice. In this book, 𝗎𝗎 decrees that, quote, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And then he goes on to say, I am a god of war and vengeance. Choose ye an island and fortify it. Dung it about with enginery of war. I will give you a war engine. And with it you shall smite the people, and none shall stand before you. I am the warrior lord of the 40s. Remember, this was channeled by Crowley in 1904. Crowley claims that his second otherworldly encounter, which resulted in an even more profound influence on his work in magic, occurred at Montauk, Long Island in New York in 1918. This entity introduced himself as Lamb, which Crowley was quick to point out meant path maker, path finder in the Tibetan language. It is from this word that Lam-as of Tibet are so called. Rising from the ashes, Crowley drew an effigy of Lamb, which eerily represents the popular modern image of an alien. Parsons met up with another well-known character in Los Angeles, L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, he had a lot of interesting friends, didn't he? The infamous founder of the Church of Scientology. Parsons and Hubbard quickly became firm friends, and the two of them then set off on self-proclaimed magical rituals of enormous significance, trying to conjure up spirits and summon the gods alchemically. Some of these ritual practices were sexual in nature and performed at the pre-construction site of the Great Palomar Observatory, remember, at 33 degrees north, just south of here, at they believed to be a great sexual center of the earth. It was shortly after this experience that Parsons grew darker in his methods and motives and started the now infamous Babylon working to literally create a child. Babylon actually means the gateway to the gods, which of course you know. The great whore of Babylon, which in Parsons' mind was to have balanced the aspects of our consciousness through sex, magic, and alchemy, was his intent. From the pen of both Crowley and Parsons before they died, their ultimate goal was stated as nothing less than immortality itself, to continue their practice beyond this earth, ultimately extending into the great temple of space itself, in order to once and for all make communion with the gods a reality for them and all mankind.
Most of the church, I'm hoping most of the church, knows that the whole alien thing is are demonic manifestations. John Mack, Jacques Vallée, J. Allen Hynek, all of these were secular researchers. They all came to the conclusion that these things were not intergalactic but interdimensional, and that they weren't completely physical. It was more of a paranormal nature, although they manifest physically in our physical realm, but they are spirit beings. These are just the same entities that God warns us about, the fallen angels and the children of the fallen angels. We read in Genesis 6, which was completely thrown out. It's a supernatural. If we don't understand Genesis 6, we don't understand the Bible. The reason for the flood was because the fallen angels had made it with the daughters of men and created these giants, gigantes, which means earthborn. And the Nephilim are the fallen angels, the fallen ones. They came and left their first estate, which is their spiritual existence in heaven, to have children.
Now, I'm going to tell you something a little bit different about the alien species. The bad news ones, there are 9 races of alien populations. To look at a human being as a bag of food. They're not cannibals. They don't eat the flesh and the bones and all that kind of stuff. They use the glandular secretions of animals and human beings as a mixture of the vitamins for their food. They get high off of our adrenal gland substances called adrenal chrome. It's something like cocaine to them.
To have children. And they rebelled against God, and Satan wanted to keep Christ from being born. So if he miscegenated everything and mixed it, then there would be no pure human for Christ to manifest. It was to redeem humanity. That's why Noah was saved. He was perfect in his generations, genetically pure. It wasn't that he was such a great guy. These are all the same. It's good cop, bad cop. The Pleiadians and Nordics are against the reptilians, and they're going to fight for them to help you. But either side you choose, you're choosing Satan. See, Christ is the only way. I do a lot of videos on that, but this is mainly to expose like the Hindu gods, the multi-faced. You can see in Ezekiel that the cherub that guard the throne of God have 4 faces. And a lot of the Hindu gods have multi-arms. I think a lot of that is interdimensional portals. Maybe being caught between time-space makes them look like they have more than one arm. They could have multi-arms. I don't know. I know they made a lot of crazy creatures like minotaurs, and you'll see them. I mean, look, these people in ancient days that made statues and drew pictures, they were drawing what they saw. This isn't imagination. This is what they saw. The Greek gods, the Titans, the Olympians, a lot of the descriptions of the Olympians have flashing, blinking lights and stuff like that. That sure sounds like technology. I don't know if the angels were limited in their transportation, so they created things, but I know that in Ezekiel he said the spirit of the creature is in the wheel. That's what came to me when I asked God what these things were. Now, Ezekiel's not a UFO, it's a wheel of the throne of God. Each one of them is one of the wheels of his throne, but their spirit was in that wheel. So if the cherub spirit is in that wheel, can't the fallen angel spirit be in the wheel of a UFO? I mean, it makes sense. So
There have been polls conducted, Gallup polls, one poll called the Roper poll. The results were extrapolated and sent to over 150,000 American GPs, medical practitioners, that basically said it's almost at epidemic proportions. They estimate that up to 4 million Americans may have had an alien abduction experience, as they believe. And then you've really got to wonder, why is the nature of it so deceptive? You know, if they're really here to help us, as some of these contacts claim, you know, why do they go around acting deceptively? Why do they stealthily abduct people in the middle of the night? And, you know, when I say it was confronting, there was some subject matter that was particularly disturbing. You know, people claim they've been taken onto a spaceship and probed in all parts of their bodies. There are sexual encounters. There seems to be some sort of almost ritual abuse that's going on. So you've got to ask, why would advanced, you know, evolved creatures, you know, kidnap people in the middle of the night and do these horrible things to them, and yet say, you know, we're here to help you evolve? And it's interesting that, you know, we'd like to apply, if you like, a scientific tag to it, but quite simply it seems that these creatures claim that they fly millions of light years across the universe to basically deny the Bible, Christianity, and teach us almost New Age beliefs. Why would advanced extraterrestrials come just to teach us religious messages? And it seems to me, and again the researchers will show you, that the messages being received are deceptive in nature. They will tell you things like, well, you know, we've come from Venus or Mars. In the 60s, that was the messages. Well, we now know that's impossible. Now they say they come from Sirius or Orion or Zeta Reticuli or somewhere far off, where we can't test those claims. And that's the problem. And some of the stories they've told us, like that, we know to be demonstrably not true. And if someone comes to you, Chris, and tells you a story and does all these things and says, I'm here to help you, but then does brutal things to you and then lies to you, then I don't think trust is a good place to start. Let me just talk about abductions, because as I said, that's where I think we can unpick it. People that claim these abduction experiences say that little grey entities enter their room in the middle of the night and they see them pass through the walls, or they see them enter through the ceiling. And then these people who believe that they've had some real physical experience claim they're taken through the walls. Now you and I know that can't be happening, but these people are having a real experience. But the question is it really aliens? Now my conclusion there is I don't believe it is.
Never existed one culture on the earth that did not recognize the gods, and the gods who were behind the kings, and the great gods who were behind all things. Not one culture has ever existed that did not recognize that there were higher forces at work on the earth. There is no doubt in my mind that our government is also very keenly aware. There, even within the Christian and Jewish religion, there is much proof in the Bible of the existence of angels or spirit creatures who are influencing man's destiny. So I have no problem with believing that there is some sort of a extraterrestrial, if you will, intelligence, because just even the knowledge that the ancient Sumerians, for instance, and the Egyptians had about our universe, about the whole concept of the precession of the equinox, how the sun moves backwards in the signs, and the different astrological symbols and the astrological terms, and there's just too much occult or hidden knowledge that was known by the ancients that could not have been just intuitive. It had to have been from someone out there who brought the knowledge to us.
sorts of complex designs. These first appeared in the late 60s, I think early 70s in the south of England. And they were a pretty simple design, and then they got more and more complex. And some of the hyperbole that's followed these, and you've heard some of this stuff, they are so precise and so exact, they could not have been man-made. The stalks have been bent in such a fashion, they've not been broken. We don't know any technology that can do that. There's leftover radiation. The cellular structure of the corn stalks or the wheat stalks or whatever it is have been changed. We've heard stories like that. But in the 1980s, two elderly gentlemen by the name of 𝗢𝗿𝗶𝗴𝗶 and 𝗪𝗺 stepped forward and claimed responsibility for all the crop circles that appeared, you know, in that early period. Now, they multiplied all over the world, so the first thing you need to realize, even though there are experts called seriologists, okay, serious field studies in this, that say that they're created by aliens, just average Joe Blows like you or me gathered that it could be made, and they started replicating it all around the world. And Doug and Dave, when they came out and took credit for them, they were debunked. Here's how they make them. You can go to this website, circlemakers.org, and that's how they make them. Look at this, folks, a plank and 2 bits of rope. That is the most common and effective method used by people all over the world in making crop circles. However, there is a sinister side to it. And the circle makers, and again, look for yourself, you go to their website, their name originally was Team Satan. And you would wonder why somebody would call themselves Team Satan. I mean, they're in this for business now. Obviously it was politically incorrect and they changed it. But why would a group of people call themselves Team Satan? Well, when you investigate their website, you'll see that they say when they build these crop circles, they have all sorts of paranormal experiences. People have had healings, there's been radio interruptions, lights have appeared in the sky. And so they don't believe that it's UFOs, they just think it is some sort of psychic or paranormal experience. I mean, for example, I was in Canada recently, I turned on the Sci-Fi channel and there was a woman channeling a message from an alien being. And she was saying from this alien being that we've evolved to such a state that you couldn't see me. My atoms move so fast that if you were to pass your hand through my body, if you were to try to touch me, your hand would pass right through my body. And so people are dabbling in some sort of what they think is some sort of pseudo-technology when it's really opening a doorway to the occult.
A lot of these UFOs you see in the air, the ones that glow really bright, those are demons, those are fallen angels in the air, massive fallen angels taking the form of angels of light. They could take any form. They take the form of UFOs, they take the form of aliens, they take the form of comets, anything. If they have enough demon power, they could take any form. And when these major Illuminati families do sorcery and conjure them up and give them blood, and there's a lot of human being authority and power behind this, these demons could perform signs and wonders in the air, and they could take any form. And what's going on with these crop circles is, I'm going to put a bunch of pictures up. I got one here of a gray alien. This next one is a Kabbalah symbol, which is ancient mysticism and all this garbage. It's witchcraft, people. Now, the next one's a pyramid that, just like on your dollar bill, with the sunburst behind it. Next one's a butterfly, like monarch mind control. Next one's a chalice, like you see your Roman Catholic Pope holding. The next one's a Christmas tree of Nimrod, that all you morons who are Roman Catholics are celebrating Christmas, and even some of you Christians are celebrating Nimrod still. The next one's an eye of Lucifer, the next one's a pyramid again. This one's very interesting, the next one. It's the black and white floor I showed you guys in my video about the Vatican and the Freemasonry temples. It's that black and white floor in a crop circle. What do you know? Just like in my pictures. This next one is a phoenix. Just like at the Olympic ceremony. What do you know? Now, if these were aliens from outer space, why would there be a phoenix that the aliens would make, and then we as people decided to make that same phoenix with the star over it at our Olympic ceremony? Isn't that a little weird? Isn't that a little weird? That's because the Illuminati's are the ones behind conjuring up demons that are making these images. And the Illuminati is behind demonizing the people that made the plan of what the Olympic halftime or the Olympic ceremony was going to be. You'll notice they always have a central point and a circle, or if they don't have a circle around, they'll have, you know, things leading into a center. That center is designed to be Lucifer and the power of the demonic conjuring. That's where they conjure up these demons.
At this point, I today do not know what it was in fact that we saw. But when we got back to the hotel, the motel that night, Paul said that he, about a half hour, 45 minutes, something like that, after he fell asleep, he woke up totally awake, and something picked him up. Actually picked him up and set him up in bed involuntarily. And the moment he sat up, a light came on over his head like a little dim night light. And he looked up to see an alien's face with the typical alien's face with the bubble eyes, but it was glowing, and you could see through it. You could see the ceiling through it, as if it were a hologram of some kind. And it was glowing, looking at him, and he said it slid across the ceiling, went across the ceiling, hit the wall, and came down to where it was even with him sitting in bed. It went through the wall and disappeared. But Ivy, in my room, was laying so that she could see the door, and she said she saw the glowing on the wall, but she couldn't tell what the light was because it wasn't very bright. And she said, but when she opened her eyes to see the glowing of the light in Paul's room, which was the face on the wall, a little red, tiny little red dot of light came through Paul's room and came in and hovered over her.
The band leader says, how long have you fellas been involved with sorcery? And he shocked us a little bit. And I said, exactly what do you mean? Well, he said, you know, what you people are doing, talking to the supposed spirits of the dead. He says, this is silly.
And this man had been at the seance with you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's telling you that it's silly what you've just done.
Because see, my wife, he says, goes to these seances because she gets comfort and she gets something good out of it, good feeling out of it. And she lives for what the spirits you know, are going to see that the future is going to be like. To me, he says, I can't bother with this stuff. He says, I want power, I go right to the source of power. And he says, how do you think that I became famous the way that I am? Well, I said, you must have had some good luck. Well, he says, there's no such thing as good luck. He says, there's either some power working for you somewhere, or you don't get ahead in this world. Not in my type of occupation. So he said, the supposed spirits of the dead that you're talking with are demon spirits. They're fallen angels. They're beautiful beings.
Just set it out, just like that.
Oh yeah.
It didn't make you uneasy when he said they were
Well,
just
you know, it shocked you a little bit, you know, something that you first hear mentioned to you. He said, you guys have got a great future ahead of you. Because we've been told, the high priest of our society, secret society, has been told that the master has very special plans for you too.
Now, what did he mean by the master?
Satan. And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing. He says among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood. People believe that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence than they had when they were alive. Also that they are in a position and have the capacity to help the living here on earth. See? And you take, for instance, like Loretta Lynn. She says on national television, and I have the data on it, that I heard it myself. She said that she was made successful in her singing career by a dear friend of hers that was the same age as she, and died when she was 18 years of age. And Loretta was trying to get into the singing world, you know, but she says, I had no success at all. Until one night I was sitting in bed reading a book, and she says, who walks right through the wall with my friend, the spirit of my friend? And she says, Loretta, I'm going to make you a very famous person in singing Western country music, and I will be with you all the time. Trust me. Now, the priest explained that when people believe in this business, they are actually opening themselves to be completely deceived by demon spirits, because it gives the demon spirits an opportunity to impersonate the dead. So, who are they talking to? He says, the friendly demon spirits that have always found over the centuries great delight in impersonating in apparitions departed loved ones and persons of great renown. Then the medium said, we have a very special surprise tonight for you people. A spirit will manifest itself openly here in a few minutes, and it's like a big gust of wind hit the building and right through the wall. And that translucent being seemed to come right out of the wall.
How did you feel right at that moment?
It's almost like my heart stopped a little bit. You know, very weird feeling. It was a lady in a beautiful evening gown, swirling. And she said to Mary, "My dear sister, you are so wonderful to have asked for me." And Mary fainted and fell right off her chair on the floor. And a couple of guys jumped up and picked her up, and spirit gone. And that was the beginning of it.
In summary, folks, these demon spirits have the capacity to manifest into any human, into an alien, into a UFO, into anything. And these beings have a long recorded history known as ascended masters or quote-unquote gods.
I'm going to introduce a man who says there are more things between heaven and hell than any of us have accepted. And I have the witnesses and the documents to prove it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Stephen Greer.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns. That they use anti-gravity propulsion systems, which we have already figured out how they work in classified projects in the United States, Great Britain, and elsewhere. That these objects have landed on terra firma, at times have been disabled, and have been retrieved specifically by teams within the United States. That extraterrestrial life forms have been retrieved, and their vehicles have been taken and studied thoroughly for at least 50 years.
It is a very well-known fact by the research that I've done and many others, and there's videos out there, at least I hope so, because with all this censorship going on, that the UFO Disclosure Project, owned by Stephen Greer, run by Dr. Stephen Greer, is actually being funded by the Rockefellers, the Rockefeller Foundation, you know, the biggest, one of the biggest Illuminati bloodlines of the 13 Illuminati bloodlines, is actually funding this disclosure project. And I'm very ashamed of that, because you guys know that I followed these people for quite some time. However, whether or not the disclosure project is actually legit or not, there's another propaganda tank, propaganda machine pushing this alien deception to the people, and obviously mixing truth with lies, lies with truth. And that's the History Channel, promoting this new series which has been going on for years, for what I know, Ancient Aliens. And in this series they tried to pretty much say that everything in life was done by aliens, saying that we are supposedly aliens, saying that God is supposedly aliens, saying that the Sumerians actually got their technology from aliens, which is actually wrong. The Ascended Masters, or demons, or quote-unquote gods, were the ones who gave these ideas and power and technology to the Sumerians back in the ancient days. It was no aliens at all. So, not only do we have the Disclosure Project, which obviously we have a lot of members there. You know, we got David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, and a whole bunch of other researchers there. But we also have History Channel promoting this bogus information. And so I just wanted you guys to be aware of that, because there's a lot of misinformation going on the alien subject and on extraterrestrials and what's really and who they really are, really, because they're just demonic beings. And all these hybrids and all these underground bases too, they're all facilities for these demon hybrids who are participating in satanic black magic rituals and being summoned by satanic forces and our government. So just be aware of that, folks.
Anyway, I'm hoping you guys get that this whole thing is really a spiritual event, and is going to be more of it, more coming deception. They've been finding bodies of these little fairy-like creatures that look like gargoyles. It's a real body. They have skeletal structure in the x-ray. They've taken DNA that's unidentifiable. These things are real, and in Revelation it says men's hearts are going to fail them for what they see coming on the earth. Can you imagine?
I know people personally that go around and talk about the Illuminati, and they're so heavily demonized and they're tortured for it. You gotta have Christ. Please watch my next video. Be blessed in the name of Jesus, and may the strong delusion, if it's still on you, be lifted off. And if it's not on you, God bless you in your walk with Jesus Christ, because He's the only way. He's the only way you can protect yourself from this. And it's coming on us quick, guys, so get Him now. Get Jesus now. Amen. Good night.